What's up guys, this is Zach with Top Deck Nation, and today we're going to be looking at a set review of the brand new Sun and Moon 2 set, which is known in English as Guardians Rising, and then in Japan, of course it's broken into two mini sets called Islands Waiting for You and Moonlight of Alola. Now, just a disclaimer, this is going to be a bit of a, pretty laid back, informal kind of set review. If you're looking for something a bit more professional and a bit more refined, a bit more in-depth and stuff, we will have an article up as soon as it's out in English. Just letting you guys know that a lot of times in Japan, we have all of these sets kind of come out and it's really exciting, but then once it comes to the West, a few of them might get left out, and that's because Pokemon wants to, not saturate a set and put like 200 cards in it. But, for the most part, I'd say 90% of these cards should be out in English when it comes out. And that set's actually going to be hitting stores on May 5th in America and Europe. So be sure to check it out at your local store when they come out then. Now, what's interesting about this set is that it's kind of a mix of the Sun and Moon 2 set and this other set known as the Sun and Moon Strengthening set, or in Japan known as Sun and Moon 1 Plus. Now, we're going to be getting cards from both of these sets. They're both, really interesting sets. They have a lot of playable cards, and, I think the Sun and Moon arc, eventually, I think a year and a half from now, it'll be Sun and Moon on. As far as the rotation goes, right now it's Primal Clash on, and then next year, hard to say, but probably going to be Breakthrough on. I assume they want to keep the break mechanic going on, but a Sun and Moon on expansion rotation is going to be really interesting because there's just so much going on. I love the mechanics of the Pokemon GXs. I like how even the evolutions like Espeon GX, Umbreon, Sylveon with this upcoming set, they're all really playable cards. I mean, Eevee is super easy to get out, powered up, evolves right away. Decidueye evolves right away with Forest of Giant Plants, and even the stage 2s that are, a bit wonky, like Primarina and Incineroar, if you can get them out, you're definitely going to get rewarded. Primarina is definitely interesting. There's just a lot of evolution cards even that are, somewhat playable right now. So we're going to be looking at both of these sets today. And we're going to kick it off with the Sun and Moon 2 set itself, which is Islands Waiting for You and Moonlight of Alola. And again, I'm just going to kind of scroll through the list here, just kind of point out some stuff that I think is notable. I've kind of skimmed over it a few times, done some theory mining, if you want to call it. And I think these are the cards that are definitely going to see some play in competitive decks, some rogue decks, budget decks even. Basically, we're not going to be, focusing so much on the filler cards. A lot of times there are some filler cards and stuff, but we're going to focus on things that I think will definitely make an impact in the metagame. So to kick it off, we're just going to kind of scroll down here. Victreebel seems kind of interesting here because not only does it work with Forest of Giant Plants, but it's got this Pollen Hazard attack for a single energy, and it does 3 status conditions, which is pretty insane if you think about it. It poisons, burns, and confuses. So they actually changed the burn rolling so that I think you take 20 damage and then you flip to see if you keep the burn. Before, I think you had to flip to see if you took the burn damage. So essentially burn is basically an extra 20 damage now, and it could pretty much stack over a bunch of turns if they can't retreat out, and if they kind of flip tails and stuff. Poison, of course, is 10 damage, and confusion, I believe, you have to flip to attack, and of course if you get tails, I think you take 30 damage or something. So potentially this is kind of interesting as a rogue deck. I mean, if you play it with Forest of Giant Plants, just kind of basing it off of how popular Vileplume and Decidueye are, those decks are really consistent and really easy to get out. So I think Victreebel would work. So you're doing 20 damage plus 10 from poison plus 20 from burn, so you're already doing 50 damage, possibly confusion. And expanded, you could play, even Verbank City Gem to kind of stack more damage on it. So Victreebel could be like a budget deck. I'm not really sure, but it could be interesting for sure. As far as some other stuff here, we have the Victory Star Victini, and I am extremely excited to see this make a comeback. Now, if you haven't checked it out already, we did make a video, which I will link up in the corner, so check that out, where we kind of talk about it a bit more in depth about some partners and things like that to go with Victini. But this ability is really sick. I mean, it's, the ability to reflip a coin makes a really big difference. And, Victory Star, it saw some play forever ago. It was I think it was the Heart Gold Soul Silver On format or something. But there was a deck and it was called VVV, and it stood for, I think, Vanillix Vileplume Victini. And essentially you trainer lock them and then you paralyze with Vanillix off of a coin flip, and if you didn't get the coin flip, you just use Victini, and you probably would get the coin flip. So I can't really think of anything right away that uses Victini, but like I said, there are some partners in the future that I think will really take advantage of it. I think, first thing that comes to my mind is probably Articuno with the Delta Plus trait, so it can do more damage and take really cheap knockouts. And then Mega Aggron, which is, not seen play in forever. I mean, it's weak to fire, it takes 4 energy to power up. Really bulky, just hard to get out. You never know, because, if you're one-shotting your opponent, it might be definitely, something to look into if you can kind of center your strategy around it and, get these one-hit knockouts with Aggron. So you never know. Turtonator GX is something I am extremely excited for. I think it is probably very underhyped right now, very underrated. But look at this GX attack. For 1 fire energy, attach 5 fire energy from your discard to your Pokemon in any way you like. I mean, that is that is just insane. I mean, 5 energy, your first turn of the game, attach a fire energy. It doesn't really matter if you use the GX attack. You have to use it anyway, and certain decks, they don't really have a GX attacker anyway. Of course, obviously I'm thinking of something like Volcanion. You've got Scorched Earth to put the fire in the discard. You've got Steam Up. You have all these ways, Ultra Ball, Professor Sycamore, all these ways to get your fire energy into the discard. So getting 5 energy on the board right off the start, powering up a couple Volcanion, and you can even play Max Elixir with it too. So, I mean, it wouldn't be surprising if by your second or third turn, you've got like 9-10 energy on the board. I mean, it's definitely not unrealistic. And its attack isn't even that bad, to be honest. I mean, Crimson Flame, 160 damage, so not bad for just 3 energy. And you have to discard 2 fire energy, but that's not that bad. I mean, you could wait to use the GX attack and just put it all back on. And then the first attack actually isn't bad either. 20 damage for a DCE essentially. And if it's damaged, basically your opponent has to take 80 damage. So it's like a really good bursting balloon. And keep in mind, this does stack with Steam Up. So the Volcanion EX ability, if I've got 4 of those, I think that's 140 damage. And then if my opponent tries to hit me, that's going to be 80 damage, which should be enough to knock out pretty much anything. Even with a Fighting Fury belt, most of your big basic Pokemon, they've got like 210, 220 HP, so it should be, more than enough to knock it out. Alolan Sandslash, it seems like kind of like a worse Octillery almost. Once during your turn, draw a card. I mean, I think we had that with Slurpuff before, except you could draw up to 2 cards if it was like active or something. So it's a bit of a worse Slurpuff, but you never know. There might be a card that kind of pairs up with it later. Maybe, for each card in your hand, it does more damage. I think there's a Metagross that's like a really, really cheap card, and it has that attack. It's like Gatling Gun or something like that. I don't really know, but I think for a DCE, it pretty much did that. So I mean, maybe it could pair up with that. Kind of clunky at that point, but you never know. We might see something that kind of pairs up with it. Alolan Vulpix and Ninetales, I'm actually pretty excited about these guys. I mean, it's great to see some water types. Alolan Vulpix and Ninetales, they're definitely just, really cool. I'm glad that Pokemon made them I think they're ice types in the game, so they're water here. But it's really cool how they just kind of did rehashes of the originals. I do wish they had done more megas in the games and stuff, but the Alolan Pokemon are actually pretty cool. But what I like about Vulpix and Ninetales is just how easy it is to set up, and the amount of damage and stuff it does. If you haven't really seen this before, the little gray symbol here, it basically means that the Pokemon can attack for free. It doesn't have to have any kind of energy cost or anything. So basically your first turn, I'm going to use Guidance. I'm going to get 2 Pokemon, reveal them, and put them in my hand. So more than likely, it's probably going to be maybe another Vulpix, Ninetales. It could even be something like a Shaman, or, pretty much anything that you can think of. It could even be like a Primarina if you want to play that with this deck. It seems to kind of have some synergy there. And Alolan Ninetales, all 3 of its attacks are actually not that bad. 50 damage to one of your Pokemon, it's kind of sniping a Pokemon. And just keep in mind, it is a stage 2, or a stage 1, I should say. So it does work with those evolution abilities that let you change its typing. So with Jolteon, it becomes a lightning type. With Flareon, it becomes a fire type. So really interesting there. And then its attacks here, it's doing 160 damage. That's not bad. With the Choice Band, that means it's doing 190 damage, which is enough to knock out anything, since they did bring back tool removal. And that's going to be a big deal, and I'll talk about it in just a few minutes. And then its GX attack is move all damage counters from this Pokemon to your opponent's active, and that's also really big. I mean, it's got 210 damage. It can basically sit there and tank using things like Rough Seas to heal it off, Pokemon Center Lady, etc. And let's say you get 110 damage on Ninetales. Well, I just bring up Shaman, I use Cleargate GX, and suddenly I'm completely healed and you take 2 prize cards. It's really similar to Mega Mewtwo's attack, damage swap, and I think it should see some play. I mean, it's really affordable. You can get it out your second turn. Definitely look at this card, check it out. It's going to be under the radar. I think it'll be really interesting here. So as far as some other cards here, this is probably one of the ones that I am most hyped for. And I know I've said that like 3 times in this video already, but it just kind of shows you how exciting this set really is. There's a lot of good stuff in this set. I mean, usually I don't buy booster boxes because, in a sense, in a word, they're kind of a waste of money. Normally you spend like $90, $100 and you don't really get your money's worth. I mean, the code cards are nice. They might value up to like 10, 12 bucks. But, that other 80 some dollars, unless you're lucky enough to pull like a secret rare Ultra Ball or something, normally you can't really justify it. But I think it's a little bit different in this case. Sun and Moon was a great set. Even the cards that people initially thought were bad, they're starting to win tournaments. They're seeing a lot of play, like Espeon and even Primarina. So, it just kind of goes to show you there's a lot of playable stuff here, a lot of deck creativity in this format. But, not to ramble so much here, we're going to talk about Tapu Koko. And Tapu Koko is really interesting. It kind of combines Dragonite EX's busting ability with some other things. So once during your turn, when you play it to the bench, you can move any number of Lightning Energy and switch Tapu Koko with your active. So this is an insane ability. So not only can I switch into a fresh Tapu Koko, but I can attach as many energy as I want to for my other Pokemon, my Lightning Energy. And that's really big considering, its second attack, Skyquall, it's doing a clean 130 damage. So enough to knock out, your baby Volcanion, plenty of stuff like that. But, more importantly, it's two-shotting, pretty much anything. And it's just a clean attack. There's no downside. I think, I recall like a competitive player mentioning that, we haven't had a card with doing this much damage, being this efficient with no downside in like forever. It might even be like one of the best cards as far as that goes. So 130 damage is really good. And then of course it's Tapu Thunder GX attack, 50 damage times the number of energy attached to all of your opponent's Pokemon. So if you go against a deck that loves to abuse Max Elixir, any kind of other form of energy acceleration at all, like Volcanion or something, Tapu Koko is just going to kind of wreck those decks. I mean, it's just insane. It's really punishing your opponent for attaching energy. And, this is probably going to bring down Yveltal, which, for the most of the season has been like the king of the format because, I mean, honestly, it didn't really have any weaknesses. I mean, Lightning isn't really played besides Raikou and Electrode, and that's kind of clunky and not good. But Tapu Koko has a lot of stuff going for it. And of course, something I just remembered, it doesn't even have a weakness. I mean, none of these Tapus seem to have weaknesses. So you can't even like try to counter it with like a Zygarde GX or something, or a Zygarde EX, I should say. But yeah, I mean, I think Tapu Koko is going to see a lot of play. Definitely, invest in it. But I think it's actually going to come to a 10. So they're making this really, really affordable. Let's see, as far as some other stuff goes, we do have Machoke, and Machoke is pretty much the hard counter that we really have been desperately needing for Decidueye. So initially when Decidueye came out, people didn't really hype it. They're like, oh, it's okay. I prefer Crobat in my Seismitoad decks. Forest of Giant Plants is good with it, but is it really worth devoting like a third of your deck just to get this guy out? You might prize it. They might Lysander it up, etc. But, the tables have turned because the Decidueye is pretty much dominating the format right now. I mean, it's basically topping every event. It's winning every event. I think he got second in internationals with Pablo Mesa. Check out his channel, Tablemon, because he does a lot of great work with Pokemon Mexico. But yeah, I mean, he got second at Oceania Internationals with this deck, and there's just been like, this huge birth of Decidueye decks. There's Decidueye Vileplume, there's Lugia Decidueye, Tauros Decidueye, Espeon, Umbreon Decidueye. The ability is just really good, and especially in a format that does not have tool removal. I mean, if you can't shut off, if you can't shut off Decidueye, if you can't do any of that, then you're in trouble. And I say tool removal because, Garbodor should be a counter, but it's not really, because if it's item locked, I mean, what can you really do about it? But Macho Cure, it has this ability called Intimidating Stance, prevent all damage and placement of damage counters from your opponent's attacks and ability done to your bench Pokemon. So essentially, this is really countering things like Decidueye, Crobat and Golbat and expanded, Trevenant Break and expanded. So anything that can basically kind of wreck your deck by Lysandering something up, spreading damage until you just kind of lose or something, it's going to help with that. But the only thing is, I wish they'd made this a basic, because a stage 1 is just, it's hard to get out. You might prize one of them. You pretty much have to play like a 2-2 line to have a chance. And, not to mention that it only works on your bench Pokemon. So, what's to stop me from kind of bringing up a Volcanion with 3 retreat or so, and just kind of slowly killing it, and then just going to the next one, or just bringing up Machoke and knocking it out right away. So very hard to say for sure if it'll see play, but I do like that they're trying to hard counter this stuff before it gets out of hand. Hopefully it won't be another Mewtwo wars with Decidueye or anything like that. So continuing with the GXs, we have Kommo, I think how you pronounce it, Kommo GX. I'm not a big fan of this because it's a stage 2. Its attacks cost 4 energy, which is just insane. I think you have to play something like Vikavolt with it, and even that's kind of clunky because the stage 1 isn't really a grass type, so you can't really use Forest Giant Plants with it efficiently. So I don't really like this card. I mean, it's interesting. It looks really awesome and everything, but as far as the attacks go and playability, it's kind of lacking. And even the GX attack, I mean, it's a clean knockout, but the cost is just way too high. So I don't know. Blissey, the ability is great. I love this ability because anytime you can heal and kind of skew the math, I mean, it kind of brings a match in your favor. The Mega Gardevoir deck that saw a lot of play recently, I guess it really hasn't seen play recently now because of Decidueye and things like that. I'm not really sure why it kind of dwindled down in play, but for a while it had a bit of popularity in the last couple months. And it played things like Pokemon Center Lady. It played Fairy Drop, Olympia, pretty much anything to skew the math. So it could 2-shot you, but you could never really knock it out. And Blissey is kind of taking that cue. It's really similar. It's got this ability called Farm Fresh Eggs, and as soon as you evolve it, you can heal 80 from your active. So if you play a bunch of Blissey, you never know. You could just kind of keep healing. Maybe 2-shot your opponents, 3-shot them, etc. But if they can't knock you out, I mean, they can't win. So you're slowly chipping away and they can't really do anything. So really good for stage 1. I really like it. It's got a high amount of HP. Retreat cost is kind of bad, but I mean, that's how it goes. You can always play a Floatstone or something like that. Now, something I want to talk about is just the immense amount of trainer cards they're kind of bringing to this set. We'll see some more in the Sun and Moon 1 Plus set, but in Sun and Moon 2, we have a lot of interesting cards here. Energy Lodo. Look at the top 7 cards of your deck. If there are any energy cards, choose one and put it in your hand. So, you could always play Professor's Letter or something else to get energy out of your deck, but it does work with any energy card here. So if you find a double colorless, double dragon, rainbow, etc., you can just put it in your hand. So in a deck that you might thin your deck down to the point where you can always get it. It might be pretty interesting. I think maybe in that Aerodactyl deck or something that kind of popped up at regionals recently, it could definitely use that. Any kind of deck that relies on like maybe just playing 4 DCE, that's the kind of deck this is kind of aimed towards. Anything that's kind of thinning the deck out, so Night March or something like that, I don't know, but that's really what it's kind of aiming for. And if there was an MVP of the set, I think a lot of people would have to vote and say that this card is probably going to be in every deck. This is called Field Blower or Leaf Blower or something. I don't know how it's really going to translate. But Field Blower says choose up to 2 of any combination of tools and stadiums in play, and it can be yours or your opponent's, and discard them. So this is tool removal. This is something we have been wanting for since this format started, because Garbodor has just been killing it up until now. I mean, Garbodor has been rampant. It's been in like a lot of decks, Mega Mewtwo. It's really the reason why Evoltol decks have just kind of flourished. But more importantly, it's because that decks like Greninja, Volcanion, they suffer because they just can't use their abilities. You can't use Shamans, you can't use Hoopas, you can't use anything. And those decks just, they have like an inherent disadvantage just because of, one card, just because of Garbodor. So Field Blower is going to help balance that out. It's going to get rid of Fighting Fury Belts. It's going to get rid of Float Stones and all of this stuff. And we're going to be heading back into a format where, you don't necessarily have to do 200 plus damage to get a knockout. I would say that my prediction is that Volcanion is going to do extremely well now because it's just so easy to hit those numbers. I think Tapu Koko is going to do really well. I think a lot of decks that can hit the magic number of 170 are going to do really well now. So I think Field Blower is definitely something to look out for. And then we have Hala. And Hala is really great because anytime you can shuffle and draw 7 cards, that is insane. So normally you just shuffle, draw 4, but if you've used a GX attack, draw 7. So it's really tempting to just go ahead and use your GX attack, get it out of the way, take a couple cheap knockouts with something like Tauros or attach energy with Turtonator, and then just keep using Hala throughout the game. I mean, shuffle, draw 7, really strong. I cannot, overstate that. It's a really strong effect throughout the game. And then lastly, we have Aether Paradise, and it says that each player's basic grass and lightning Pokemon take 30 less damage from attacks. So this is, it's got some obvious pairing with things like Tapu Koko. I think there's another Tapu I'm going to be talking about from Sun and Moon 1 Plus. It's a grass type. Those are probably the obvious partners, but I'm sure there are a lot more, like Raikou. Raikou already heals 30 damage. You can put a Fighting Fury Belt on it. Its ability reduces damage by 20. So, it's going to be really hard to knock out a Raikou, assuming that you can, get it up, power it up, and play the Stadium card. So I really like the Stadium card. I think it will see some play. And I think that pretty much wraps it up as far as the first half of Sun and Moon 2. You can just kind of look at these really amazing full arts, really just beautiful artwork. It's pretty crazy how they're reprinting like everything like 2 or 3 times in a single set. And it's just really just kind of a fan service for collectors, people that like max rarity, that kind of stuff. And yeah, it's really good to see how it's going. So the second half of the set is called Moonlight of Alola, and we're going to kick it off with Phantump and Trevenant. So there's a lot of controversy regarding both of these cards, but especially the Phantump. So the Phantump, if you haven't noticed, it's a grass type versus a psychic type. So you can use Forest of Giant Plants with it. And in Expanded, that means there's going to be a lot of interesting decks pop up. You can now have a turn 1 Trevenant, even if it's not really your turn. If you don't want to use Wally and go that route, a simple Forest of Giant Plants, there you go. And, more importantly, there's a lot of talk about, Excelgor Trevenant being one of the best decks, once this set comes out. And the reason being, Excelgor is a grass type, it's got deck and cover. You can do like 50 damage, go back to the bench and paralyze and poison your opponent. So that's already good. And with Trevenant, you bring it up and suddenly they're item locked. So basically they can't really get out of it. But now you can actually pull this off on your first turn because you can evolve Phantump into Trevenant. You can evolve Shelmet into Excelgor and you're already set up. So, I don't know how much of an impact it's going to have. Maybe it's just hype. I don't know. Maybe people will counter it. But it is kind of a scary thought. And why they printed another really playable Trevenant, I don't know. But it's got Poltergeist, 30 damage, times the number of trainer cards in your opponent's hand. So not supporters, not items, not stadiums, but trainer cards. So all 3 of those. So if my opponent has like 7 trainers in my hand, or in their hand, I should say, that's 210 damage for a DCE. So you might even see something like a Trevenant Vileplume deck. It might be a really cheap deck. But, a bunch of non-EXs, it's really hard to knock out 6 Trevenants when they're doing that much damage. So be on the lookout for that as well. And as far as some other stuff go, I do like Salazzle. I think the ability is interesting because it reminds me of Crobat, but like better in a stage 1. It's saying that when you play this card from your hand to evolve, your opponent's active is poison and burned. So like I said, poison does 10 damage, burn does 20. They do kind of have residual effects. So the next turn they'll just keep stacking, assuming your opponent can't switch. So, this could be something in like Seismitoad decks and Expanded. Salazzle is interesting. You put 30 damage down, you item lock them. Definitely something to look out for. And then we have Wishiwashi GX here, and finally I see why the Wishiwashi kind of pairs up with Wishiwashi GX. There was one in Sun and Moon set, it was kind of bad, And at first, even this one seems kind of bad. Once during your turn, you can switch it with a Wishiwashi GX. Well, why would I want to do that when I can just, put down a Wishiwashi GX? I mean, it's a basic, but this GX attack here, 220 damage, move all energy attached to this Pokemon to your bench Pokemon in any way you like. So basically, I've got 5 energy on Wishiwashi. Let's spread the 5 damage or the 5 energy to a bunch of baby Wishiwashis. And then the next turn, I can just kind of use that ability to switch from the baby into the GX again. Keep in mind that is a GX attack though, so I don't know how much play this will see, but it's a definitely an interesting ability. So yeah, I mean, be on the lookout for it, but I think it is a little bit clunky here. And so it looks like we're kind of approaching the end of this set, but there are a lot of cards, we still haven't gone over. So Garbodor, I actually like the attack here. Trash Avalanche, does 20 damage times the number of items in their discard. So, in my opinion, especially mid to late game, this is way stronger than the Trevenant because, it does trainers in the hand, but this one's items in the discard. And, typically you might play like 25, 30 items in a single deck. It's not uncommon to have like 5-10 items in the discard your first turn, so Garbodor could be pretty interesting, especially as like a budget deck. And of course, you could play an ability like Garbodor alongside this Garbodor, so you could play like a Garbodor deck or something. Delmise is really cool because it boosts metal Pokemon's attacks, and it doesn't seem relevant right now because there's not a lot of metal Pokemon attackers. But in the expanded format, that's a lot different because you have Bronzong. A lot of people are thinking about pairing Bronzong with Sigaleo. You have Genesect. So I think this Pokemon has a lot of potential, and it's a basic. I mean, I put it down, and it's essentially like a plus power. It's an extra 10 damage, so I think it will see a lot of play. And Tapu Lele is probably the other card that is hyped. My big 3 from this set are probably going to be Field Blower, Tapu Koko, and then Tapu Lele. And Tapu Lele might even take number 1, tied for number 1, maybe, I don't know. But it's essentially a Jirachi EX and a Lugia EX and like a double max potion all in one. I mean, that's how good it is. And, if you are on the fence about buying this card, I'm just telling you right now, you probably want to get a playset of this card because I guarantee it's going to go up in price. Unless it's just super easy to pull, it's going to go up in price because the effects are just so good. It's not going to be reprinted in a 10. They've already kind of announced that. So be on the lookout for this. But the ability, once during your turn, put it down on the bench, search for a supporter. So if it sounds familiar, it's Jirachi EX, but it's better in pretty much every way because it's got no weakness. It's got more HP. And then Energy Drive, 20 damage times the number of energy attached to both Pokemon. So it's essentially like a Mewtwo EX or a Lugia EX. Now, keep in mind, they did try to balance it out here. It's not affected by weakness or resistance. So you're not going to have like a Tapu Lele war or anything like that. It's nice and balanced, but the effect is just really strong. And then the GX attack, restore all HP to 2 of your bench Pokemon. So heal 2 of your Pokemon. And that's really strong for 1 energy. That is insane. You never know what kind of decks are going to be playing this. Maybe decks that play Rainbow Energy can kind of squeeze it in regardless, just to use the GX attack. Espeon GX is Psychic, so it could definitely take advantage of it. But I definitely recommend getting a playset because I think it will go up, and I think it's probably one of the most hyped cards of this set. Now, we do have Lycanroc GX. A lot of people, they liked Lycanroc originally, the one that's in like the promo box, but it's kind of hard to get set up. It's kind of clunky. People don't really know how to play with it. Recently, I think a Vileplume build kind of popped up and people are kind of experimenting with that. But this Lycanroc, it might make it a little bit better. It has an ability that's essentially a Lysander. When you play it down, you can bring up one of your opponent's Pokemon. So if they're building up something, maybe the Lycanroc with the active, the one that knocks off the energy, maybe you can just keep disrupting that way. And then the GX attack is doing 50 damage times the number of your opponent's bench Pokemon. So against something like Mega Rayquaza, Mega Gardevoir, anything that uses Skyfield, it's going to just kind of obliterate them. And then in general, most Pokemon, most benches are going to have like 4 or 5 Pokemon regardless. So, it's essentially just one-shotting something as its GX attack. And that is, that's never bad. Definitely not bad to just take that one shot. Metagross GX is It's a stage 2. It's hard to get out. It's an evolution. I wish this had been a basic because this would have been insane. Or even a stage 1. The ability is just really good. Once during your turn, attach either a psychic or metal energy from the discard. So, I mean, I think it could pair nicely with like Solgaleo, Lunala, but you have to have the rare candies. You have to do all this stuff to get it out. The GX attack is really good. Search up to 5 cards, put them in your hand. Of course, your opponent can just play something like an N or a red card or a judge to kind of get out of it. So it may not be good right now, but once those cards rotate, you never know, it might see play. We might see some kind of format where, the evolution cards just kind of dominate. They might print some cards that really hinder these basic GX Pokemon. But as for now, the big basics are, pretty much the king of the hill here. And we have a few more trainer cards to go over. I think that pretty much wraps up this part of the set. Aqua Patch is going to help a lot with these water decks. So this is definitely a water-oriented set. It's basically a dark patch except for water Pokemon. And I don't really need to tell you how busted dark patch is and expanded, or just in general, energy acceleration. We have Max Elixir right now. But attach a basic water to one of your bench water Pokemon. So it doesn't even say basic. You could attach it to Primarina, to Alolan Ninetales, and I think this is really what it's going to partner up with. Rescue Stretcher is kind of like a buddy-buddy rescue and a super rod all in one. You can either choose one Pokemon from your discard and put in your hand, or choose 3 Pokemon and put them in your deck. So really good. It might just replace super rod in some decks, like Mega Gardevoir might actually find more use out of this than a super rod, just because I can bring Dragonite back to my hand or put 3 Pokemon back in the deck. So there's a little more utility with it. And then as far as the other trainers, we have Mallow. Choose 2 cards in your deck and put them on top of your deck. This is, pretty interesting because you can use something like Acrobike, Shaman, or Octillery, anything that lets you draw cards, and you essentially just get any 2 cards you want. So this could be really good in any kind of stage 2 deck. I essentially use Mallow, and I can put my rare candy and stuff on top. Now, something I just kind of thought of, you could use the Tapu Lele, use his ability to search up Mallow, and then you essentially have just so many outs to getting this card that it's ridiculous. You can Ultra Ball for it. Just so many ways to get it. And I think that it's going to make, this card might actually make some evolution decks a bit more playable. Anytime you can get the rare candy the first turn, you can Trainer's Mail those top 2 cards if they're trainer cards. It's just kind of, a lot of synergy, and I think we'll see that played as well. And then we have Hilltop Stream. Once during their turn, each player can search for a water or fighting basic Pokemon and put it into play. And that's insane. It might even replace like Ultra Ball or something in some decks because, Ultra Ball is an item. If you get item locked, you can't really do much. But this is a way around it, and I think it will see some play because, free search for a Pokemon is always strong, and I think it'll be really good. So I think we've pretty much covered the majority of these cards. If there's anything I missed with this part of the set, let me know. I see that awesome Enhanced Hammer. They're printing that in gold as well as the Aqua Patch. But now we're going to go ahead and move on to the Sun and Moon 1 Plus set. And I think in one of my previous videos, I kind of talked about that a little bit, but we're just going to skim over these. The set isn't that big because most of it is actually reprints of cards from the original set, Sun and Moon, but there are a few cards that we want to just kind of go over and talk about here. So it looks like Decidueye and stuff, that's basically the same. We're going to get those in promo boxes, supposedly. But Lurantis, that is a video I did a deck on. Check it out. But it has Sunny Day. As long as it's in play, each of your grass and fire Pokemon do 20 more damage. So you could have some kind of shenanigans where you have like Forest Giant Plants with Volcanion, and it does more damage. You can play it with, Decidueye and other kind of grass decks like that. Trevenant, Tapu, the Tapu that we're going to go over in just a minute. There's a lot of really good ways that you could pair up this card, and that's why I think it's really interesting. And it might see some play, it might not, but I think it's really easy to get out an extra 20 damage a turn, just with Forest Giant Plants in your first turn. It's really hard to pass up here. As far as some other stuff, there are a bunch of these Oricorio cards printed in here, and I think they're all somewhat playable. This one has an attack for 1 fire, search your deck for 3 basics, put it on the bench. So definitely some synergy with Incineroar GX. And Incineroar, I think its damage relies on the number of fire Pokemon you have on the bench. So this is a pretty obvious way to, get those cards out. Vikavolt GX is also really strong. It is the stage 2, so again, it's really hard to get out, but the attacks are really strong here. Let's see what it has here. We've got Charge Beam, 50 damage, attach 1 energy from your discard of this Pokemon, so that's not bad. You're already powering it up, getting it ready and everything. Super Zap Cannon's doing 180, so it's one-shotting stuff, but 4 energy and having a discard isn't that great. And then Gigatron, I should say, 60 damage to each of your opponent's bench Pokemon. That is crazy, especially with something like Wide Lens. I think Wide Lens makes it so that you do apply weakness. So supposedly, you could just take out 3 Shaymins in one blow and take out all of your prizes in one turn. But keep in mind, it's a stage 2. It's hard to get out. If they had made the other 2 evolutions, the previous evolutions, grass type, that would definitely be different, because that way you could use Forest Giant Plants to get it out. And then we have another Oricorio, a couple of them. Oricorio in its PAL form, it has Vital Dance. When you play this Pokemon from your hand, search your deck for up to 2 basic energy. So that's a pretty easy way to get some energy. If you have any kind of card that needs energy, I think it's basically like a Professor's Letter. So, I mean, maybe when Professor's Letter rotates, this will be a nice card with things like Volcanion. Toxapex GX, it's a stage 1. I think it's kind of underwhelming, to be honest, just because of the high energy cost. I mean, if there was kind of like a psychic patch to get your psychic energy out, it might be a lot different. But right now, it's really hard to get that out. There's nothing to really accelerate to your stage 1s. But the attacks are strong themselves. I mean, doing 100 damage between turns with poison is insane. But again, I mean, if you can't get it out, it really does no good. Now, Sudowoodo, this ability is going to be insane because it's essentially kind of like a semi-parallel city. It's a nice balance, and it's really kind of forcing your opponent to have 4 Pokemon. So there's not really much they can do about it. Gardevoir decks, Mega Rayquaza decks, unless they're playing like Hex Maniac, they can't do anything, or Silent Lab or something. But, at that point, they don't really have Skyfield out. So, regardless of Skyfield being out, I think Sudowoodo's effect does take priority. Though it does mention that if there's another card out that restricts more Pokemon, so Parallel City, that one has priority. So if Parallel City's out, Sudowoodo doesn't really do much. But overall, I think it's just a really hard counter to any kind of Skyfield deck. So it's just so easy to tech against it now. And I'm just trying to look here. Most of these are just kind of reprints, it seems. But Absol, I do like Absol. This second attack here, return all energies attached to this Pokemon from your hand. Your opponent's active is knocked out at the end of your opponent's turn. So this attack by itself might seem kind of bad because it takes 2 energies. Absol is going to get knocked out. But I think a deck that you could play with this is probably with Mew EX and Dimension Valley. So with Mew EX, I can attach a single dark energy. Dimension Valley, it's a stadium. It says that my attacks cost 1 less energy. So basically for 1 energy, I can knock out my opponent's Pokemon the next turn. Now, you might be thinking, they can just retreat out, they can switch. You could play it with Vileplume. I mean, it's really hard to say. There's a lot of different options. Any kind of item lock, any kind of lock whatsoever to make sure they can't retreat out. So it sounds kind of clunky, but you never know. It could be something to look into. And Sylveon is probably one of the best GXs that I've seen so far. Magical Ribbon, it searches your deck for up to any 3 cards, puts them in your hand. So if you're playing it with evolutions, you can just pick the evolution that you want, like Jolteon or Flareon or Vaporeon. Fairy Wind is just a clean 110 damage. So with those evolutions, you're essentially 2-shotting anything. You're already knocking out a Shaman, some little things like Vespiquen, but the math is just perfect with Jolteon, Flareon, etc. So, I mean, it's already extremely good. But then the GX attack takes it a step further, and you pick 2 of your opponent's bench Pokemon, and you return those Pokemon to their hand. So if my opponent has like a Pokemon that has like 3 or 4 energy on it, I send it back to the hand. They've already wasted their max elixirs. They can't do anything. So I think Sylveon will be extremely good. And of course, it does pair up with the Energy Evolution Eevee, which basically says I can attach a Fairy Energy to Eevee on the first turn, and it becomes Sylveon on the first turn. So pretty insane if you think about it. And Drampa GX, I like Drampa GX. It has a lot going for it. It's another card I say that you should invest in because, is it the next Shaman? I don't think so, but, the GX attack is amazing, draw power and stuff. Righteous Edge, it is 20, knocks off a special energy, so this might be really, really good against Decidueye decks. Berserk 80 damage. If you have any bench Pokemon that have any damage on them, it does 70 more. So with the Choice Band, that is essentially doing 180 damage. And since you have that new Fill Blower card that knocks off tools, that should be enough to pretty much knock out anything. But what I like about the card the most is the GX attack. Just 1 energy, it's colorless, shuffle your hand in your deck, draw 10 cards. That is insane. So in a format where N rotates or N isn't played quite as much, this is really good for setting up. If you play any kind of evolution deck, my guess is that you want to play 4 of this guy or 3 of this guy. You want to start off with them, you want to draw your 10 cards, you want to get your rare candies, all that stuff. So, really good for pretty much any kind of deck. It's splashable in anything, and it's one of my favorites. I would say it's in my top 3, top 4, top 5, but I do recommend getting a copy or 2 if you can. And then as far as the item cards and trainer cards go, these are basically just kind of reprints of the ones we've already seen. So we got these in Sun and Moon for the most part. There's a couple that we haven't. There's multi-switch, move an energy card from the bench to the active. So it does work on special energy, but the only limitation is that it's not like energy switch where you can move anything around. It's just to the active. Choice Band is probably, on the top 5 as well. This card is really good. Like I said, tool removal is coming back, so Garbodor is going to suffer. Any kind of deck that plays Fighting Fury Belt is going to suffer, but Choice Band, if you opt to play this instead, you can suddenly hit those magic numbers. So something like Volcanion, just extremely easy to hit those magic numbers. And then you have Altar of the Sun and Altar of the Moon. The Moon Stadium says that all Pokemon with Psychic or Dark Energy attached have 2 less retreat costs, so this could definitely be good in something like Eviltal decks. They already play Floatstone and stuff, but this is a really good option if you just want free retreat. And then Altar of the Sun, Fire and Metal Pokemon have no weakness, so this can make Volcanion decks a lot more powerful. And also because it could make the mirror match a lot more strategic. Normally it's whoever gets set up, they can get a quick one shot, take some cheap prizes, but that's not really going to be happening anymore because Altar of the Sun can change it, and it helps both of the Volcanion players, so they don't really have a reason to get rid of it. So I think it'll be really interesting to see these mirror matches. That pretty much wraps it up. Again, there's some alternate artwork, really pretty artwork here, guys, but otherwise I think that's pretty much it. And there's some more hollow energy, of course, but that's pretty much going to be it as far as the cards that are going to be in the Sun and Moon 2 set, which is Guardians Rising. And as I mentioned, in English, America, Europe, etc., we're going to be getting these on May 5th. They're already available in Japan. They just came out last week, but we're going to be getting them in May. And I thought I would just kind of share this with you. These are just kind of my thoughts. This is kind of an unofficial set review. Again, it's really laid back, really informal. If you're looking for something a bit more in depth with deck lists, things like that, possibly, we're going to have it up on our website at topdecknation.com as soon as the set launches. So as soon as I get an official set list in English, I'll go ahead and put that up, hopefully before the launch. And yeah. But be sure to subscribe, guys. I really appreciate the support. It means the world to me. Like us on Facebook if you want to stay up to date as far as articles and stuff. And, check out our website, topdecknation.com. We're going to be launching really soon. I know I keep saying that, but it's been kind of hard with grad school and some other things lately. But we're going to be relaunching. So if you like how-to guides, you like strategy articles, videos, things like that, check it out. 100% free. We don't have a paywall like some other websites. And we have some good writers as well. Nico Sutter, he's an Austrian player, I believe, and he's just done really well with regional championships, things like that. So be sure to check out his latest article and such. But I hope you guys like this set review. Let me know in the comments if there's any other content you want to see soon. I'm definitely trying to branch out and add more content based on what you guys want to see. But in the meantime, this has been Zach with Top Deck Nation. Thanks for watching so much, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.